America, my name is Irami Osei-Frimpong. I do this show to help you not squander your life. And one of the ways you can squander your life is by being a so-so parent because you take other things very seriously. Then you end up with screwed up kids. And it turns out that screwed up kids kind of take the shine off of all of those other things that you thought were so important. And then all the money you made ends up going to that kid's rehab or lawyers or failed ventures. And really what you should have been doing is just being a better parent. But being a parent is a skill. It's a skill and an acquired disposition. So I'm helping you develop that skill and acquiring that disposition. You're welcome. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go to funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50. But towards that end, I read the Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mom, Amy Chua's book that came out about, I want to say, 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. I remember when it came out, and I would consider myself a tiger parent. I'm a good parent, right? So I'm going to put some content into that because I think she's right about a lot of things, and I'm going to tell you the things she's right about, that what she calls Western parents, what I often call liberal parents, but what she calls Western parents aren't right about. And since we agree on so much, and I have been doing these videos way before I read this book, I'll just tell you that the problems with Western, or what I call liberal parenting, are just obvious, are simply obvious from anybody who looks on the outside. And the only reason they're not obvious for the people who are inside of it is that, one, the culture supports it. So, there's that. But two, there's so much money among this set that they could screw up being parent and then then pay doctors to tell them that, like, actually, no, you didn't screw up being a parent. It turns out that your kid, has autism, or your kid, it's somehow your kid's fault, or some other thing's fault, not your incompetence as parenting. But I'm telling you, and Amy Chua is telling you, that it's actually your incompetence as parents. You have doomed your kid to failure, not failure, mediocrity and confusion, which is the same as failure, because of your incompetence and ignorance. And your kids deserve better, and especially black people, because I know a lot of the people who watch the show are black people. Your kids deserve better. Your kids deserve better parents than you were trained to be. Now, you were trained to be bad parents because Jim Crow leading into the civil rights movement screwed up black parenting. But Jim Crow overdetermined black parenting. But then the civil rights movement issued in a kind of market liberalism that created incompetent parents in a different way. But there wasn't really a pushback against it because Jim Crow had done a pretty good job of killing any sort of autonomy amongst black parenting, because black parenting was a function of the fear and survival for the whites. Of the whites. So what I'm telling you right now is that you're an inadequate parent. You don't have the skill nor the disposition. And books like this will help you understand how good parents are actually doing the job so that your kids don't get eaten by her kids. Because make no mistake, she is training her kids to consume your kids. And you don't want your kids to be chum. You don't want your kids to be chum. But if they're not 2 years ahead of them in their math right now, they're going to be chum. Right? So now, Chua is honest about some things, but she's got huge blind spots about what tiger parenting entails. And she admits on pretty early, I think in the 3rd chapter, she says, look, I'm very lucky. I always did the right things for the wrong reasons. And that's this book is a lot of her doing the right things for the wrong reasons. And that's not good enough for you black people or people at home to not squander your child, because if your child reflects and thinks, I need them to actually continue to do the right thing. But if you teach them to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, that means when they reflect and think about their life and your influence in their life, they're going to be resentful, and correctly so, because you taught them to do the right things for the wrong reasons, and now they have real problems to solve. Or they've already made a mistake, the kinds of mistakes that happen when you're taught to do the right thing for the wrong reason. And then you have to think for yourself, and you kind of don't know why, and you zig when you should have zagged. So why does Amy Chua, her kids, anything less than an A is inappropriate. While white kids practice violin and piano, one 1 hour, she's like, the first hour is easy. It's the second and third hour that were like actually takes real good parenting. And where white kids like send their kids off to sleepovers and all of these other things, Amy Chua like deals with her kids herself. And that's one thing I actually appreciate. If you take nothing else from this book, it's the idea that you need to raise your kid yourself and organize your life such that you raise your kid yourself. You can't depend on any institution to teach your kid the important things or work with your kids in with the quality that you do yourself. And this is important because Black people care about education. The studies show, especially Black fathers, they actually care about education. Now, why isn't that reflected in Black educational outcomes? It's because we don't know how to care about education. So you read a book like this, not because Amy Chua cares about education more than you. She might not. Or the ethical development of her child more than you. She might not. But what she does know how to do is do it well. So you can work harder and care about education not so well, but like a lot and deeply and screw it up. Or you could actually care about education the same amount, but actually just do it more effectively and efficiently. So Amy Chua might not care about education and her kids' development more than you do, but she does it more effectively than you do, which is why you should read the book, because it'll help you get over some of the bad habits of thought that you might have accrued from your own family, because she's teaching you, it's a window into how, first generation Chinese immigrants of her class, and that's very important, go about gaming America that you don't know. Right? And I didn't even know it either. I didn't know how incompetent my parents were until I went to Berkeley, and I just reverse engineered how all of these other kids were raised. And I realized that they were set up for success in a way that I was not. Right? They had parents who not only took parenting more seriously, but actually spent the time learning how to and realizing that and doing the work with the kids to develop their kids as a concerted effort of the family. And with that personal direct attention, not just making money and then hoping the institution does the work. The institution does not need to work. And she talks about the hours and hours and hours and hours and the contest that she had to the struggle she had with her kids in the music lesson. Then the music lesson is just teaching them about virtue and with a depth of training and discipline that will translate into all of these other aspects of their lives. She doesn't want her kids to be professional musicians. She just wants her kids to be able to do something deep, hard, and virtuosically. With a sort of virtuosity that what she thinks the violin and the piano calls upon both the family to deal. Teaching your kids a musical instrument, expecting your kid to learn a musical instrument is a family affair. Now, I am a very good oboe player. I'm a better oboe player than you think. And it was not a family affair for me to learn how to play the oboe. And so now I understand the upbringing of some of the other kids I was in orchestras with, and it's different. It's different. My kids are pretty good at their instruments. They're very good at their instruments. They're very good. They're very good at their instruments, and it is a family affair. I'm with them twice a day, working with them, and that's one of the reasons why they're so good. And it teaches them a quality of discipline and hard work and focus. That's something, and also beauty and virtuosity and creativity and freedom and attention that, either other instruments don't teach. My kids play the cello, the violin, and the piano. Or that you don't pick up doing crafts, coloring. Right? Now, Chua's against sports. I'm a fan of sports because I think there's a kind of depth in the technique and the concern that goes into sports, but I also intellectualize sports. Like my kids play soccer and they even do running, distance running, with a quality of intellectual engagement that maybe not other people put in their sports. But I think she gives sports short shrift with respect to the quality of intellectual engagement that it can call for. So I see her argument about music, but kids only have so many things they can do where they actually get to exercise a quality of agency through skill and discretion that I see in sports. So I'm for my kids teaching sports. But like music, I don't just sign them up for teams. I work with them. We work technique a lot. So my kids are pretty good about in both running and soccer. But it's because we work technique, not just because I just like sign them up and send them off. That's a way to prepare food for other people. All right. So in this book, she's like, look, no play dates, no screens. We practice. We do it as a family. The best is what you're capable of and what I expect of you and what I will drag out of you in a concerted effort, and we will do this together. You will bring home A's. You will be not waste your time doing plays or anything like that. You will come home, you will practice. I will get you the best teacher. I will do my job. You will do your job. And it's not up to what you want or what you enjoy, because you don't know enough to want or enjoy anything that's worth doing. So you'll just do what I say because I'm looking out. I have your best interest in mind. And liberal parents don't want to hear that, and they don't want to do that. But Chua was right. She was right. And she even makes a few jokes about if the world knew about what she really did with her kids, they might call Child Protective Services. But she's still right, so she's going to keep doing what she's doing. Now, she also says she doesn't want her kids to be the kind of automatons who jump and kill themselves because they didn't do very well on whatever standardized test. So I don't think you have to worry about that so much in the United States because, everyone else is so weak that there's not that much competition. There isn't really that much competition for your kids if you're on the ball. And I'm trying to get you on the ball because Black people, I don't want your kid to be I don't want your kid to be food, right? So what Chua fails to do is, since she does the right thing for the wrong reason, she doesn't actually understand the morality that's important to freedom, right? The quality of autonomy that's important to freedom. So she'll train her kids, and she will become herself a very efficient functionary, because she doesn't actually understand the kind of the autonomy of thought. And so thought doesn't give her content to what she does. She's not actually thinking through what she does. She's just doing what she's doing in order to suck up to whatever power structures are already extant. So this isn't really an education into self-determination, especially like in a democracy. It's an education into becoming a really good functionary for someone else who legislates. But I want you to become like the legislator, right? And so this is how this gets Amy Chua in trouble herself, right? So Amy Chua, you might have heard that she got in trouble with the Kavanaugh hearing because she works at Yale Law School, so her students were applying to become clerks at all of these famous judges, and so she knew what the judges liked. And when I said she knew what the judges liked, I mean she knew what the judges liked, right? So she would steer the hot ones to Kavanaugh and tell him how to dress because she knew his proclivities, right? So she was like a little madam. They were all smart, but she would like, all right, wear a skirt like this, and you got to have this kind of wear this kind of makeup, and let me see your outfits. And so she would like, she was a little madam, little Ghislaine Maxwell to Kavanaugh, and it's 100% believable after reading this because she's got just that quality of sucking up. Just that quality of sucking up without the autonomy that she was like, all right, this is the power structure. I'm going to teach my kids how to win in this power structure without actually interrogating the justness of the power structure. She's like a very good functionary of whatever extant order is around. So she's not going to actually teach the quality of critique to criticize Kavanaugh. She'll rather teach her kids how to suck up to Kavanaugh's kinks so that they win and get the job with, at the time, the federal appellate judge and now Supreme Court justice, right? She's that kind of person. She'll teach you how to win the game without actually teaching you how to govern the game with respect to what's right, because I don't think there was no real depth of understanding in her book about like how right can be determined autonomously through conceptual content. Like you don't just have to accept the rules as they're given to you. You can actually reflect on the rules themselves and see if they make sense. But, that's not what she does. What she does is teach kids how to win within the given rules. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And, it's going to be a problem for when we watch these kinds of kids. They're going to become anti-progressive and they're going to become authoritarian. And they're going to support authoritarian governance insofar as it's just going to make sense to them because they're not going to have the moral imagination. It's funny. In this book, she says she named her first kid Sophia because Sophia is English for wisdom. And I think that's her level of insight, right? Sophia is actually Greek. Sophia is Greek, but it's Greek for wisdom. So you want your kid to be smart and wise, and you want your kid to be like American in a way, but you don't really understand the underpinnings of America. She's one of these people who probably thinks that like the founding fathers, and I think I say this because I remember reading in the book, she talks about the founding fathers like actually making America a certain sort of nation and not the civil rights movement. Because before the Civil War and the civil rights movement, America was not a nation of laws. It was a nation of white feelings. But she's okay with that because white feelings under the law is something that she thinks she can game and teach her kids to game, and that is winning and success in America. It's a very kind of shallow understanding of success that's complicated and compromised, kind of a democracy. If you know Plato's Republic, Book 7 of the Republic, democracy is like kind of a rule of honor. It's not so much like a rule of money. It's more than that, but it's not quite the rule of wisdom, or ironically, Sophia. So she is kind of honor bound and tradition bound, and honor bound in a way that closes her off from actually making free kids who are both astute and actually can exercise a quality of governing agency so that they would be good colleagues for like governance. Like I don't want Amy Chua to be a senator of anything. I don't want her to be a legislator of anything. Maybe an executive. Well, she like executes someone else's vision, but I don't want her to be the person in charge of actually designing an institution of justice or freedom. That's not where her chops reside. But I need your kids to be more competent and not be eaten by her kids. So I need you to read this book so that just kind of understand what it means to struggle with your kid, and that's part of the calling. That is the job. If they're not crying, they're not learning. And you need to have a quality of vision that steers them and works with them through these, through that crying, through that anguish, as they develop how to be a responsible, functioning adult. You need to who can win and compete, but I also want them to be able to govern, which means they need a kind of moral sense that's not just slavishly attached to whatever standards happen to be. Happen to be delivered from tradition. You don't want to be a slave to dead people. You don't want to be a slave to you don't even want to be a slave to your parents as you get older. Like, you want to be emancipated. You want your upbringing to be an upbringing towards emancipation. And that's a competent emancipation. And that's the kind of upbringing that she, by mistakes, for the wrong reason, teaches here. But you also need the moral kind of insight to understand how to legislate and create new systems of justice. To create new systems of justice, not just slavishly win in the systems as they're given to you. Right? And so she's very good about teaching you how to win given systems, which is very important. But it's also not the same as teaching you how to govern. Right? So if you want to be, it's different playing a game than it is being the one who decides the rules of the game. But if you want to decide the rules of the game, if you want to be good at governing, you need to actually know how to play it also. And playing it at a good level is important. At a high level is important. So she's teaching you how to play the game at the highest level, but not how to design the game as an institution of freedom. Right? It's very important that you know how to play the game at the highest level. Don't underestimate that. And so read the book. But then you need to also, as an addendum, teach the quality of moral reflection that gets kids to be able to design rules in a way that's adequate to realizing freedom. And that's why I do a lot of the other show. That's why I say a tiger parent wouldn't not have necessarily created Martin Luther King Jr., but Daddy King was kind of a tiger parent, but also a pastor. So you needed both, whereas she is all Daddy King minus the pastor. If you don't know about Martin Luther King's upbringing, it was pretty harsh. Like, his dad beat the crap out of him. But towards him excelling in the household structure, right? And, and the household structure and in education. So take with it what you will. Definitely go out and read this book. First of all, it's a quick book to read. Because you don't even know what you don't know. This is one thing about Black parents. They don't even know that this kind of parenting is out there. You don't know that this kind of parenting is out there and that it's doable for you, and that this is what you should be spending your time. This kind of parenting is what you should be spending your time doing, because nobody else is going to do it except for the parent. Not your family member, not the grandma. You need to actually do it. You need to know, and you need to know that the kids that your kids are competing with as fellow Americans now, because these are, recent Chinese immigrant Americans. This is how they grew up. And if you're not training your kids to either be aware of that, the kids don't even know that they're in the game, because they're not in the game unless they grow up like this is grown up, right? Like, I just want your kids to be in the game, and I want you to be in the game as good parents. I don't want your kids to grow up and wish they had Amy Chua because you kind of phoned it in because you thought making money was more important. I don't want that for you. So go ahead. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com. Kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. I will continue doing what I'm doing and helping you not squander your kid's childhood, because your kids are owed the best quality of parenting that's possible. And they don't know what that is. So American parents, what they often do and what they often screw up is the equivalent of teaching their kids to appreciate dessert. It's very important to appreciate dessert, but you can't teach your kids to appreciate dessert before you teach them, food groups and a balanced meal, right? And if you teach them to appreciate dessert first, they will always resent being fed a balanced meal. So forego the cookies and teach your kids to appreciate a balanced meal first and then dessert. Americans skip right to dessert because that's what the kids like. And then they're surprised when their kids will not eat real food and don't have a taste for it. Right? So be hard, be directed, be knowledgeable. Think of childhood as training for freedom. But freedom comes with responsibilities. So the responsibilities come in childhood, and not like banal responsibilities like making beds and taking out the trash. That shit doesn't matter. That's not what you want your kid to do for the rest of their life, unless you want them to be a CNA. Right? If you want to go ahead, emphasize chores if you want them to be a CNA. But if you actually don't want them to be a CNA, or you want them to be able to have the quality of character to organize CNAs for better wages, then you need to actually take the reading and the writing and the working with them on these other more academic pursuits more seriously. And what that looks like isn't what you think it looks like. It doesn't just look like enrolling them in Kumon. You have to sit down and work with them. And they're going to fight you, and you're fighting the culture. She said she was handicapped by having a Jewish husband, and that she was working at a market disadvantage. But even he, kind of agreed with her. He just couldn't have a positive program the way she could. This is her kind of distillation of their dynamic. But I'm going to take my kids to a Passover dinner, Passover Seder, so that they could so that they can experience a Haggadah, because it's a quality of cultural questioning that unless you've actually been in, you don't understand what that means to mix spirituality and intellectual kind of engagement in such a way. So I'm going to take my kids to a Haggadah, because that's not something they get in the Protestant church. I mean, not a Haggadah, a Passover Seder. And they're going to actually just see that as a way to be. This is a window into as a way to be that you don't know of, but other kids do. And if they do that and you do, what you know, they win, especially now in this nation of laws. So you need to know better parenting than you were exposed to. You need to know better spiritual practices than you were exposed to. And ones that mixed kind of virtuosity and depth and meaning with hard work and discipline in a way that you might not have been exposed to. And it needs to come from the family level. So read the book, go to a Passover Seder, and then make your own decisions. But don't make your own decisions without reading the book and going over to a Passover Seder, just assuming that you turned out fine so your kids will. No, this is going to be a different world. And it's especially going to be a different world as the Trump people take over, right? This is going to be a much less forgiving world for black children. But you can train them in order to compete and progress if you do it. If you leave it up to institutions, well, they'll just be food. In the same way that liberals screw up their kids. And I don't want them to be food. So read the book, go to a Passover Seder, and then make your own decisions about the cultural influences you want for your kids, and what it means that even if you don't want this for your kids, this is what other people's kids are getting, and your kids are going to be in competition with those kids. So you cannot be indifferent to the tiger parents out there, because my kid will eat yours. And I don't necessarily want that. I want your kids to be colleagues with my kids. And so we can make a better world. So go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, and I will talk to you next week about something else.